Wake that ass up.
Early in the morning.
The Breakfast Club.
Morning, everybody. It's DJ Envy, Charlamagne the Guy. We are the Breakfast Club. We got a special guest in the building.
The legend.
The legend, executive at so many different labels. Started as an intern and turned into a CEO. We could talk about whether it was Motown, Epic, Def Jam, or, of course, Rock Nation Music. Ladies and gentlemen, Benny Pough. Welcome, sir.
Whoa.
Benny Pough.
Welcome.
Yes, sirs. How y'all
feeling,
doing,
man?
Everything's good, man. You one of them brothers, man, that people think in the Illuminati.
We Christian first, though,
That's
big.
right.
Yeah,
That's right. That's right. And I always laugh at that because people think, any black person that has had tremendous success in the music industry, has to be in the Illuminati or had to get there by some nefarious means. Forget God and hard work.
Yeah, but you know what? It's interesting, man. I've had an amazing journey, and starting as an intern at Motown Records and finishing my career as the president of Rock Nation Music. Is no Illuminati involved in that. Right. Just hard work, like you said. I mean, look at this. You guys have done an amazing job in growing and developing, and no one can cheat you from that.
But they think we in the Illuminati too, though.
Yeah, well, hey, listen,
I don't know
man.
why we do
man, put that,
get
that, the Thrones is a little, hey, you knew what was coming with that, though, B. Now, but listen, if I didn't know you, right, if I didn't know y'all, I would be with them a little bit too, though, right? But with them, right? But, hey, listen, that's going to happen anyway.
All praises due to God, man.
Yes.
So let's start from the beginning. So
Yes,
how
sir.
did you get in the music industry? What turned you on to music? And start from your very early on.
So the crazy thing is, I'm probably one of the only people who've been in the music business that had no aspirations. I used to do stand-up comedy during college. I went to St. John's University. And at the end of a show, the regional director of promotions, the promotions person, how they do a little side work, they'd put together a comedy show up at the Cellar. And at the end of the show, she asked me, what was I doing? I hadn't put my resume together, had no plans. And I was like, I don't know. She's like, why don't you come be my intern? And the crazy thing is, where we from, no one ever prepared or even told us what an intern was.
Right.
So when she asked, I did what most people would do, and I had a sales background. I was like, yeah, I'll be your intern, not having no idea what it was. So I went down to Motown on 729 7th Avenue, and it was crazy because, my background was sales. So I showed up with my three-piece suit on, F-shade case, and my wingtips. When I got off the elevator, everybody was either he's FBI or he's definitely on the wrong floor.
Right.
And that's how I got in the music business.
Wow.
Do you think the art of internships has been lost because of the fact that you have to have so many checks and balances to be an intern now? Like they don't just take people off the street and say, "Hey, come be an intern."
And now they get paid.
Yep.
You know, good brother, a lot's been lost. Starting at the root levels. To your point, the intern is what opened up. When you think about a lot of people that we know who are now successful in the music business started as interns.
Me too, yeah.
Yeah, so, and the interns got attitudes, like what they not gonna do. Right? Like what they not gonna do. And you know what? They complain and, hey, listen, rules should be in place so that no one's abused, but you gotta put that work in. Like I ran around the clock, 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning and still had to show up at 9 o'clock the next day. There was no passes for that. So I agree with you. I think that, ultimately, the kids are going to miss valuable opportunities not having the opportunity to actually get an internship.
Did you know what part of the music industry you wanted to do when you started interning? Did you know, I want to do radio, I want to do promo, I want to do sales, I want to do A&R? And did you know what you wanted to do and where you wanted to go?
So the crazy thing is, not having any idea what the music business was. Grew up in a devout Christian family. So, music was the devil's business, right? Yeah, we didn't even do that. But I was a sales guy, so promo was instantly
and where you from, for
my
people
net.
that don't know?
White Plains.
Right Plains.
Right here in White Plains. But sales, promo was natural for me, man, because you got to think about it. I sold cutlery door to door. I drove limos. I worked for Citibank. I sold fax machines. So when I got in the music business, this product, intangible product called music, man, like I'm gonna mop y'all up. Y'all don't know nothing about this. So that was my aspiration. More importantly, was leaning on what I already knew, which was sales.
Now, how did you get your first opportunity to be bigger than an intern? Because at the time, everybody was growing. Everybody was coming up the lines, but they didn't know what it was, and they really thought hip-hop was going to be a fad that wasn't going to be a long-lasting genre.
So my first true job was the regional director of promotions at Motown Records. So Deidre Tate, who was my boss, she went on to work for Michael Bivins at Biv 10, and she made them hire me as the regional. And that stuff don't happen no more either, right? People go like, yo, either you're going to give them the job or nobody gets the job. And that was, my entry point into the business. And then things started going. So after Motown, I went to work for Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis at Perspective Records. Left there, went to Arista Records in D.C., which was crazy because it was the first time, living in D.C. that I actually saw the power of just like blackness. In the suburbs, White Plains, we don't get that. There was Black Bakers, Black Taylors, Black Banks in D.C., which was crazy.
City.
Yeah, and it was progressive. And then from there, went to MCA Records and went to the West Coast. And we had a great run, Casey and JoJo, All My Life. We had Guy, the reunion of Guy, New Edition. I gave Common his first and only one number one record with The Light. Gave The Roots their first and only number one record with You Got Me. Left there, came back east. Def Jam walked in the door. Kevin and Leo brought me over there. They left 9 months later, right? And then LA walked in, and I rode with him for like 14 years.
I'm glad you mentioned some of the artists. I want to go back to Biv 10 for a second, man. So that's Another Bad Creation.
Yep.
That's Boys to Men.
Yep.
Talk about that success with Boys to Men, because this black group from Philly wasn't supposed to be that successful.
So it was so nuts, man. And I'll never forget, like, I took them on their first college date in Virginia. And, at the end of the show, man, they just huddled and they just cried for the opportunity. Like, you knew they were going to be different because of, how they were raised, who they were, and that their talent was insane. And I think the industry misses that a lot, right? Just pure talent.
Absolutely.
How did y'all cultivate a talent like that back then?
I mean, that's a lot of what the record company used to do that doesn't do now.
The A&R.
A&R, marketing, promotions, publicity. Like, you got to think about the conveyor belt of success. All of the departments touched the artists and were involved in making sure that they got the best education, necessary for them to become the superstars they would ultimately become.
And I was going to ask, is there any artist that you passed on or you seen a label pass on your side that you'd be like, damn, I should have picked that artist up, or I should have went for that artist?
So we had an opportunity when we were at Epic to get NBA YoungBoy, right? And the company just wasn't ready for it, but that was one of the things that I saw and brought to the label that, things happen. You're supposed to be where you're supposed to be.
And when did the label start to change? Because there had to be a shift, right? It went from records to cassettes to CDs. And when streaming hit, did everybody believe right away, or was it one of those things like, nah, this ain't gonna happen?
Nah. And you have to think about the configurations, right? I'm old enough and I've been doing this for 30 years from a corporate standpoint. So I've seen all of the different iterations of what you're talking about, right? Going from, like the vinyl to cassette to MP3s, right? All of the different configurations. And in each instance, the labels themselves, it'll never change, right? But it always does. And then there are new players that come in that adapt to the change more so than anything else. So, the evolution has always been ongoing.
Is that one of the reasons you walked away from Head and Rock Nation Music in 2019?
Well, the crazy thing is for me, I've worked at 7 different labels, and, that's just been my modus operandi, just to make room for other people. And part of, for me, what my next step was this book, right, on Impact. I was in a near-death car accident where I hit a tree at 90 miles an hour as a passenger, and I sustained a level 2 concussion. That's when you black out between 1 and 5 minutes, L3, L4, vertebrae fracture, bulging disc in my back, lacerated liver that led me to lose half my blood supply. And we hit the tree so hard that it severed 2 feet of my small intestine. And in that moment, God put a book inside me called On Impact. And Impact is an acronym that stands for Intuition, Mastery, Pivot, Authenticity, Connection, and Teamwork. And had I not left what I was doing, then I wouldn't be where I'm at.
How did that accident change you as a man?
Man, listen, it's so interesting that you asked that question, because I thought about it today coming to this show and realizing, as an alpha, right, as an alpha male is how I was reared, right, to be the man, right? Like, you have to be a man first. Old school, right? We can get into, the dynamics of that later, but what the accident did, it humbled me and showed me, what it really means to be a man. I couldn't take care of myself. My kids saw me in the weakest state possible, right? Friends, they disappear. And ultimately, you don't even know, there was times where I didn't know if I was going to live the next day, right? And the excruciating pain that I was in, it humbled me and showed me that, what the value and true purpose of life is, right? Is how you spend your time and who you spend your time with. So it was definitely a pivot for me.
Now, when you got into the car crash, was that what made you walk away from the record side, the label side? You wanted to spend more time from your family. You wanted to get away from the game a little bit. Too many over hours. It's because the game teaches you to spend more time in the industry and less time with family.
So that was the beginning of the shift for me. After the accident, I realized, there's a difference in me. There's a larger purpose. There's more that I need from this life other than, just working for folks, bringing blessings to others in a way that doesn't help fulfill me. And, the music business as a business itself was at its expiration date for me. So, over time, I just started moving over those years into what was best for me. And that was stepping out on my own, betting on myself.
I want to talk about the term you used, alpha male, right? Because I hear a lot of men use that term, and I feel like a lot of those people who use that term alpha male aren't natural leaders. They have to have that label in a position to lead. So what how would you describe like real leadership?
Oh, so when you think about, the alpha perspective, I mean, I look at it from historic, as well as, how the hierarchy of things work, right? There's leadership. Ultimately, like if you look like wolves, you look at lions, right? The alpha is not a negative term. It's like who actually provides, right? Who is the protector, all right? And as a child, my parents they raised me as someone to provide and protect. So that's why I use the term, from that perspective. But you also miss the sensitivity on the other end of what it takes to be that, right? Like life is not always just about protection. It's also about receiving. It's about vulnerability. It's a lot of things. And that's what I learned, from the accident as far as the leadership and management end of things, always a giver, and ultimately for me to make room for all of the people who have worked for me, I had to move on, and I never brought them with me. Like the majority, there's only been a couple people that followed me when I was at the 7 labels, but it was more important for me to train those people, right, and then teach them how to fish so they can go on and live their lives and be their best.
And why is that? I mean, I'm asking because most people, when they move from place to place, they bring a certain crew with them. Why did you choose to just move Dolo?
For me, it's like, that's just who I am, man. I mean, ultimately, the divine spirit for me was more importantly about training, right? And if it's kind of like, if you can do it once, you can do it twice. If you can do it twice, you can do it 3 times. And had I not done that, there wouldn't be as many African-American Black executives in the positions that they are in the music business today, right? Because, when you think about it, a lot of them have worked for me or either we've crossed paths in one way or another.
Have you seen people who are leaders but don't have leadership qualities?
All day, every day.
Word.
Yeah, all day, every day. Word. I mean, some people really do fall up, right? Some people, nepotism still works, right? Your girlfriend, your boo, they in a position they can help you. All that stuff still exists. So just because you have the title doesn't mean you can do the work.
What would you say is the difference with putting out, artist music and putting out your own book?
You know what? It taught me how to put out my book. We were Amazon new release bestseller, and I took a lot of the principles in breaking artists and delivering number one records for all of these acts. It's nothing new under the sun, right? And even like putting together my conference, same kind of root process. It's about how you actually take all of the tools, put them in your toolbox, and know when to pull them out to do the work.
I was going to ask, how much does Black execs really have control, right? Because people say, like, when you look at somebody like a JayZ or a Diddy or Jermaine Dupri, right, who have their own record label, who really distributes them? Who really backs them? So is it them that really controls it, or is it somebody over them that's really cutting the check and cutting the money?
Well, you have to think that's a multi-pronged answer, right? Everybody has a boss one way or another, unless you're independent. Independent meaning like you're funding it all yourself. If you're not funding it all yourself, then you're beholden to somebody, right? It's just like, if you have a mortgage, right? the bank really is your boss, right? And in that means. So if someone is in partnership with someone, then you have someone to answer to. So in the music perspective, it doesn't change no different than in the business perspective. If you take money from someone, you owe, right? You owe accountability and responsibility.
Now, as an artist, right, for artists listening, can you break down the signing process of an artist, right? Because an artist looks at it like, hey, I'm an artist, I signed to the label. Why do I give up so much of a percent to that label where I'm making scraps, but it's my art? It's you know, me going on tour. It's me going on the road. It's my likeness, my face, my name.
But that's a choice, right? And, you know, we have these conversations all the time, and you hear about the bad stories. Then there's some really good stories, right? Ultimately, it's where you are in your career and what you feel is a necessity. If you're independent and you can't be successful, then what you holding on to, right? Because you got to think about what people don't talk about is the millions of dollars labels throw at new artists that either blow up and become superstars or either just don't become anything. So there's a risk involved for the company and the business. And ultimately, there's a lot of different ways of being signed. You can come ice cold, then you got to take any kind of deal, right? But if you create some momentum and some traction, now you at the table, you brokering, no different than anything else. So I think the opportunity is really what the person is willing to give up in order what they perceive success to be.
What would you recommend for an artist? Because I found it interesting that, you know, y'all had the opportunity to sign a young boy, but you said y'all weren't ready. You know what I mean? What you think was lacking from the label?
It wasn't the label. It's just, you know, ultimately, well, it was the label, but ultimately everybody doesn't see everything. Think about it. People passed on Michael Jackson, right? And think about, you know what, one of L.A. Reid's most prominent stories that he's ever told is how many times he passed on Outkast. He didn't sign until what, like the third time? So, you know, there's all kinds of different measurements, and equally, when the timing is right, it's right.
Yeah.
You know,
what would you encourage an artist to do now? Would you encourage an artist to even try to get signed to
get hot? You know, if that's so, ideally, what I would say to anybody, no different than I wouldn't be here having this conversation with you guys if I didn't go out and get this book hot, right? Because ultimately, we've known each other. You're not gonna have me up on your show. That's not right. True. But you understand my point, though.
No, not for you.
Okay, well. Shoot, I didn't know that. I should have called a long time ago, right? Yeah,
you never met yourself.
But ultimately, though, man, I would rather come with value.
Word.
Right?
True.
Yo, I'd rather have something. I have a product now, right? And now it actually works for both of us. You know, it's a mutual exchange. I get to now speak to your audience, but I also have something to deliver to your audience, and that would be the same thing for an artist. Like, you know, don't go premature. If you don't have no streams, you don't tour nowhere, right? You don't have your look identified, your songs aren't hot, don't be mad, right? Ultimately, that's really what it comes down to, because there's so much that you can do in controlling your career that you can actually now create your own fan base. And with that, is going to give you leverage.
Does radio matter anymore?
Absolutely.
Because a lot of labels will say radio doesn't matter. We're more concerned with the streams. We're more concerned with this. We're more concerned with touring. You know, we're cutting budgets when it comes to radio. It doesn't matter anymore.
You know, that's been going on since the beginning of time too, right? And you have to realize that, you know, radio just becomes a punching bag from the label perspective, because they don't really know how it works, right? From the promoter end to the radio end. And people don't really care to learn. You know, you make more money and getting a record played on radio, right? ASCAP BMI than you do streaming. I mean, like, streaming is just a fraction of a penny on, you know, fraction of a cent is what you earn from a streaming perspective. But, you know, radio still makes stars. You know, ultimately it's what puts asses in seats when you're trying to get out here and really create value. And everyone's not supposed to be on the radio.
But somebody, like you say, like a young boy who puts asses in seats has never had a successful radio record.
And it's not a lot of him, right? It's not a lot. Just like he curated his career that way, though.
Correct.
Right? So he fits for what he is, and he's mastered what he does. Right. But when you look at everyone else, there's always, you know, now you have to have a little bit of social, right? You got to have a little bit of touring. You got to have a little bit of, style. You got to have the whole gumbo as far as exposure in order to be successful. Unless you've mastered a lane. If you're a radio artist only and streaming don't matter and you're going to sell, then that's cool. If you just a social artist, right, a streaming artist and radio don't matter, that's cool. But until you figure that out, you need to touch all those buckets and start building your profile.
What's something that existed, back in the day that you still wish was a part of like today's business?
Man, just straight camaraderie, man. The companies are splintered. The independent label, especially the black labels, that's where we came from, right? When you think about people who have been successful, when you look at the Helms, a lot of them came out of independent black labels. Just think about how many successful independent black labels there were 2 decades, decade and a half ago, which now doesn't exist. And that's how you got your next marketing person, how you got your next promo person, how you got the next, head of a label, was that you were able to make mistakes. Why I made it at Motown, which was the springboard for the rest of my career, is because it was a family environment and people protected us in order to develop us and grow us and show us the business that, it's okay to make a mistake. And that doesn't exist anymore.
Seems like people like that don't get books. You know what I'm saying? Like seriously, if you're not allowed to make mistakes and go through those steps, you can't have a book in your life.
Exactly.
And it seems like labels are diminishing, right? Now you don't have to come to work 5 days a week. Now you come in 2 days a week. Talk about that a little bit, because back in the day, that was the thing about labels. You would talk to the interns, you would talk to the product managers, the A&Rs. They all had to be there to have a discussion to see how it is now. But now it doesn't seem like people care as much.
So I would say this for the music business and business as a whole, I wouldn't fall into that. Like if I was a young person or even somebody who's working, I'm coming to work every day. Because, part of the success is people also connecting with you, right? It's not just about how good your work is. Do I like you? Yo, you always smile. Yo, you always ask me, do I need something? I'm stepping out. Do you want a salad? You always just come in and sit and maybe have a conversation. So how do you get that connectivity? Yeah, there are going to be people who are always going to have success because they write well, or they interact on better on a computer. But that's social. We can never take the value of social connectivity out of growth. So I was even telling the young cat who brought me over here today. It's like, yo, dude. I go in every day, like, because they tell you can work remote doesn't mean you have to.
That's right.
I think me and Charlamagne were probably one of the first ones to come back to work.
Doesn't mean you have to. Absolutely.
Because you need the feeling, you need the energy. You know what I mean? And I think, well, not the feeling.
It's easy to disappear.
Right.
It's easy to disappear. Like I watched you guys when it's different. It's totally different, right? Yeah. When y'all was in the basement and all,
it
didn't feel right. But you know what? It was the time, so it was okay, right? Because nobody else could do anything else either. But at some point, you had to go. This is where the energy is, and you're not going to get the best out of each other.
Correct.
Doing it that way either.
What artist do you think you're most synonymous with?
Future.
Okay.
Yeah, Future. Future was, I think if there was one artist that I would say was a culmination of my career was, being a part of his career with him coming over to Epic Records.
Okay.
Right. But when I look at it as a whole though, man, some of the artists that I'm very thankful to be a part of, I mean, like Lionel Richie, look at what he's done. Like,
wow.
You know what I mean? Like we gave Lionel his last #1 record at Def Jam. How crazy was that?
Wow.
But the thing is, he's a the reason why he's where he's at, because he's a consummate professional.
Right.
Never, and that is the kind of career that artists should actually pattern themselves after and go like, yo, how did he manage to go like 5 decades? Right?
Yeah. I don't even know if that's possible nowadays. Right. And it's so funny you say that, because I was just having this conversation with our boss here, Thea Mitchum. I'm like, man, you got to teach the next generation how to be timeless, but I don't even know if you can teach that.
Right.
Can you teach?
Well, you got to start by being an intern.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Or a great manager.
Yeah.
Yeah, but to your point, I don't, it's like people don't go into the studio and make, Always and Forever and go like, this is going to be timeless. This is the greatness that comes from the collaboration.
It is called Always and Forever. I mean, it is. No, it always is forever.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Now, QC one time said that it takes $100,000 to break a record. How much does it cost to break a record?
Listen, you ain't gonna get me out here going crazy with that. Let's say it this way, right? It's subjective, right? What success is and how much success costs, because it's going to be different for everybody as you start the process. Like you could start with little to no money and have a grand slam home run, right? Or you could stay tied to something that you believe is the one for 4 or 5 years and be $500,000 in. I've known independent people who've invested $500,000 in artists that aren't going nowhere.
Damn.
Right? So there is no real, barometer for success. It's all an individual, situation on how people are going to evaluate how much they're willing to put in and how they read the tea leaves on what success is for them.
What's the longest you stayed on the record that, everybody said let it go and you just had that feeling and then it finally caught? And what record was it?
Man, the longest, oof. Well, I look at it differently, right? Tony Montana was probably one that everybody said it wasn't a radio record, right? It wasn't a good record. This was a label. And we knew that it would be the setup and the start of something special for him. So that would be the one that I would identify with.
When I look at your career and I hear how you started as an intern, everything that you've done, do you think the point of entry is too easy for people nowadays?
It's still difficult though, Charlamagne, to be quite honest. Like, our business is a who you know, not really that you put in an application. Most jobs are already taken before, while it's online being posted. So, once again, networking is really, really important, especially if you're trying to get into what we do.
I guess what I hate about it is like the people who can start a podcast, or start a YouTube channel, and then now they think they right next to you.
We see that. I've seen that. You've seen that. And it's really interesting, and they're successful. That's just what modern day, that's just what exists now. That level of work that we've put in, I think is very valuable, because when we started speaking about timeless, you will be timeless. That's right. Because you got the foundation. People, you can have success, but do you really have the building blocks that are going to last? And that's where I think a lot of people will fall short or have fallen short, or either going to have to figure out that they're going to have to pivot. That's right. Right? Because when you miss steps, you still cannot learn the lesson.
Ooh, that's right.
Right?
That's right.
You still cannot learn the lesson. It just means you just moved faster.
My therapist told me that. My therapist said, like somebody like you might grab somebody and put them in position, but you allowed that person to skip steps. And being that they skip steps, they didn't acquire the skills that come along with every step of the way of your journey. So even when you put them in that position, they won't even sustain it because they don't have the skills to sustain it.
I mean, everybody who worked for me as a promo person, they had to start as a regional, and they had to work multiple markets. And that would make them more valuable than anyone else, just because their foundation would be stronger. And that was part of the recipe for making solid executives at that point. So foundation is still very, very important.
Right. We see you work with so many different people, right? Your Ye's, your Travis Scott, your Futures, your Khaled's, your JayZ's. JayZ, let's talk JayZ for a second, right? We see the greatness from the outside. What makes him so great from the inside? Things that people don't necessarily see.
My time with him at Def Jam and Rock Nation, dude he's a beast. I mean, he works. I mean, it's just put it in a small capsule. Like he's very, very committed in what he does. So that he's great is not by surprise. I remember when he had an interview for the station when they turned on with Michael Saunders, and finally got him to do an interview, and the interview was at 7 a.m. and I was the senior vice president. I was like, well, it's Jay. If he's going, I'm going to be there. Like, I'm not going to have nobody. It's one of the biggest stars in the world. And I'll never forget when I got to the station, I said, let me get there at 6 o'clock. 6:15, he was there. What artist
8 a.m. interview?
for 7 a.m.
Oh, 7 a.m. interview.
Now,
Jesus
guys,
Christ.
Guys, let me just put some perspective. I know Hove, I love Hove, but at that time he lived around the corner. At that time he lived around the corner.
That's even,
But
that's
still,
even,
bro,
that's even
bro,
more
that's
reason
early,
to be
that's
late.
But that goes once again the commitment. People who are committed to what they do don't allow mistakes to happen, right? So we've just watched a lot of great things happen along the way with him. That's all.
Absolutely.
With that said, you talk about impact, right? How impactful is it to see what he's doing with the Super Bowl halftime shows? Like to have black artists on that stage. How big is that?
I mean, the gateway that he's opening for all of us, right? Just to have inspiration and aspiration means a lot because we've never seen this. Like you got to think about the moment that we're in time. We've never seen what's happening. So, it's a testament for all of us to now go like, guess what? Dreaming and execution does work.
Yeah, Rihanna's halftime show rated higher than the Super Bowl.
Yo,
Insane.
dude.
118 million people watched the performance. I think they said 13 watched the Super Bowl.
Yeah, that's right.
That's crazy.
That's insane.
No, that's nuts. That's nuts.
Like that's insane.
I also want to talk about the showcase you put on for the Carolinas.
Let's
talk about that.
Thank you for coming, man.
Oh, no,
Appreciate
thanks for
you.
having me.
Appreciate it. So it's called It's Your Time Conference, which is a culmination of my book. So, what I thought about was, how do I continue to educate, bring information, and also discover talent. And what I decided is to go to Charlotte because my family's from Orangeburg, South Carolina. So
whoa, let's go.
Yeah. So when I would always go visit my mother, I'd fly into Charlotte and take the 3-hour drive. And so I decided to put the conference in Charlotte because it's an underserved market. Like people don't understand the value of talent that's in North and South Carolina. And we did 2 days of conference. 2 days of audition, 2 days of conference, and we gave a kid $10,000 on the spot because I didn't want it to feel hokey, right? Like like people win, but they never get it. And it was a great opportunity we had about 150 people come out and audition. They got 2 days of panels, which were from hip hop and spirituality to how to get in the music business, how to get hot in the real estate market in Charlotte and beyond. And, we had a lot of the key executives come on down. Host.
Okay.
I was going to say the gentleman that actually won, he didn't pay his rent that month.
Yo, that was insane.
Because he had to pay to get down there.
Wow.
And he actually won. Congratulations. What was that brother's name?
Juice WRLD.
Juice WRLD.
Juice Lord.
Juice Lord.
Juice Lord.
Juice Lord.
So how important is it when when you see people like Arnold Taylor, you know what I mean? Come from the Carolinas.
So Arnold
and he took the same path as you.
Yeah, well Arnold and he worked for me for 14 years.
Yep.
And he's always had that entrepreneurial spirit. And part of what he did was put his time in to learn the game, right? And he took what he learned on the inside and applied it on the outside once the opportunity came.
That's right.
More importantly, but goes back to what we're saying. You had to come get that lesson, right? Can't miss steps. And now look what he's done.
And for an underserved market like the Carolinas.
Yep.
I'm from South Carolina, so
Absolutely.
we've never had anybody. At least North Carolina's had a few.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. That's right.
Absolutely. We got to bring that conference to South Carolina.
Well, you know what it is? So the thing is, we had a big turnout from South Carolina. My family's from there, so we had a lot of them. But more importantly, we had a bigger response from South Carolina than we did from North Carolina. Probably for the reason that you're stating, like nothing really does come to South Carolina, but we're gonna get there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm gonna do my car show.
And I love that you got Queen Kathy Hughes. She wrote your blurb on the back of the book. Why'd you choose her? She's the only one.
So I've known Miss Hughes. She's been my mentor for years, and it was really interesting when I asked her because I'm one of those people who don't like asking anyone to do anything, and I finally mustered up the nerves to ask her, and she said, "Sure, Benny." So I sent her the manuscript, and she read the manuscript 3 times over the weekend. I'm like, damn, I ain't read my book 3 times, in a sit down, and she was just like very giving about it, and I was super excited. And after I read her quote, I'm like, I can't put nobody else on, right? I had others. I'm like, all right, I'm cool, right? Because that means a lot, and she means a lot.
That's why I respect it, because for whatever reason, I know that we love and we value and appreciate Kathy Hughes, but I don't think people really
They don't
truly
understand.
put Kathy on the
Understand,
pedestal
right.
she's supposed to be.
Yo, she's the first woman to be on NASDAQ, not black woman to have a publicly traded company on NASDAQ. People like forget
Wow.
what she's
Right.
done,
Yeah.
right? Where she started, and to have that on my, like, be a part of my legacy, what's forever, right? After I'm gone, that was important for me.
Yeah, I hope she gets the opportunity to get celebrated the way she should before, everything's said and done for her.
We have to make sure that she does too.
100%.
Absolutely. She's been up here before, but
Well,
absolutely.
on Zoom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was during the pandemic though. So, but we appreciate you for joining us,
Man,
bro.
listen, thank you guys.
Yeah, what's next for Mr. Pough, man?
Hey, listen,
You done
man.
conquered the world.
Yo, no, man. You know what? It's so funny you said that. Thinking about going to South Carolina, man. Open up some trailer parks.
Oh, I'm with you on that.
Yeah, B. I'm
I
going.
got plenty of I own a lot of land in South Carolina.
Listen, that's what I'm doing. That's it. Just enjoying life, man.
Word.
Having fun and just keep on giving.
There you have it. Well, it's Benny Pough.
Go get that on Impact, man. Everywhere you buy books now.
That's right. It's the Breakfast Club. Good morning.
Wake that ass up.
Early in the morning.
The Breakfast Club.